Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith, hanging out with the Elliott family, Chris, Bridey, Paula. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having
Clara's
us.
Ghost, the brand new movie. Checked it out last night. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, cool.
We were talking before. It's a interesting movie. Little wacky, little weird, but Bridey, for you, I mean, this must have been awesome being with your family and doing your first film.
Yeah, totally. It was a real safe, entrance into directing a first feature. We were in our house. I was related to the cast.
It helps when you know the cast a little bit.
And, it really felt like camp in a way because it was all my friends who were mostly doing a feature for the first time and all of us just sort of doing an experiment, basically, and not knowing what was going to come of it and not really expecting anything, honestly.
And shot really quickly. I mean,
we
How
shot
long did it take?
17 days,
Wow.
and we shot last September until October. Then we had 3 weeks to submit to Sundance, and so we edited like a maniac, and I, my hair was coming out, and I was sick for 3 months.
Wow.
But we got in, and it was insane. It's just been a very fast process. I can't believe we're talking about the movie. And
it's only been a year.
Yeah.
Basically.
But it kind of feels like 17 years since the movie
Yeah, at the
was
same
actually
time.
made.
Yeah, I bet.
I think
Because there's been a lot
we've
of...
grown as people. So.
We're not very
Since then.
close anymore.
That's
Put it
it.
that way.
So for Paula and for Chris, what was it like being directed by your daughter?
Well, we have a nice rapport that we've developed over 28 years. It was great. She didn't, put too much stress on me early on in the process with challenging scenes that I was intimidated by, and she was very sensitive to.
There wasn't a Duvall Kubrick relationship
No.
going on. It wasn't
It was
torturing
very
you.
smooth. And,
Yeah.
That's good to know.
yeah.
I wasn't. She wanted me to read the script, and that I just don't do. But other than that, I thought it went pretty smoothly.
No, my dad read every iteration of the script and was very helpful in developing it and, giving me ideas. And, it was totally a we did a table read, probably 6 months out from shooting. And it was surreal because, the script still needed work. So it felt like a little bit, oh, wow, this is what we're going to shoot in 6 months. And, this is really, it's a project,
Right.
We're going to put ourselves in here. It's going to be vulnerable, and it is a risk, We could have made a movie that didn't really allow for this big of a risk, I'd say, and, but, once we got going, it was really, came natural and was really fun.
Yeah, no doubt. And I like that you guys were willing to take that risk, given all that you guys have done in your careers. And I think it's one thing when you see it on the page, but then, you have the dancing scene in the living room and you have the alcohol and the music. And it's one thing to see it on the page. It's another thing to actually do it. So, from that table read to actually getting it on film, what was the coolest part of that experience for you guys? Start with you.
Well, I like Bridey said, I did read some of the versions, and I think everything was there originally. And what I was challenged by was sort of tuning up who I am. I'm basically playing myself, but a very
exaggerated version.
A very exaggerated version, and
Dark,
a much,
negative.
hopefully, much more negative than I really am.
Yeah, no.
Is that true? A little bit more negative?
It's bringing up, we're, toning down the light and bringing out the dark, I'd say, in each of us. And, volume up.
Right, right. And Bridey was, and I think I'm not speaking for you because we've talked about this, but like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and Long Day's Journey into Night, things that take place in one setting for an entire night, especially when people are getting inebriated. I think you were, sort of attracted to that.
Yeah, I like watching kind of the devolution of masks coming off and people becoming, villains to each other, and that's definitely, what I'm attracted to in stories. Another movie, Woman Under the Influence, I've always been obsessed with, and, I was kind of putting my mother and Jenna Rollins' shoes in that film, I'd say. But yeah, I really just wanted to do a movie where we could really let loose and just have the characters kind of run the show, which happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Clara certainly lets loose. So, you know, what was the craziest part about playing that character for you?
I think I was intimidated by the romantic thing with Haley Joel Osment.
Mm-hmm.
And once that was over, I was so relieved that I got through it and that, you know, I think it came out okay, believably. Well,
that wasn't too convincing. No, just kidding.
no, I was, yeah.
You were intimidated by the romantic stuff because you haven't acted in 30 years, not because of it being Haley or Haley's lovely.
No,
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's a big
no,
thing,
it's just
big thing for you to
this
jump
old
into.
lady
Yeah,
hitting on a 29-year-old.
Right.
For me was
it's a difficult thing for any
bit
actor
of
or
a
actress,
stretch.
right?
just for my own sensibility. I thought, how is that
I've
not
seen
going
you
to
hit
be
on
ridiculous?
29-year-olds.
Yes.
Is that without Dad there?
Yeah.
No,
Or-
no,
well,
Oh, with Dad
I'm
there.
usually there.
Yeah.
Walmart, Costco.
Yeah, but anyway, so once we got through that, I just thought, okay, we did it. Well, I did it with him, and he was great.
You did it with
He's
him?
I
Sorry.
did the scene. I did
Wow.
the scene.
Did the scene.
Yeah. And
No, I thought you really did a wonderful job with it. That's a tough role, and you just hit on a lot of different things with that role. Mental health is something that certainly is in the foreground
Yep.
there. So
Yep.
I think
Definitely an issue
Yeah.
in our family.
So when people check this out, I mean, there's obviously a lot to think about here. But what are some of the main things, whether it's family or whether it's ghosts or whether it's haunted houses? What are some things you want people to hit on with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, when I was writing it, I was thinking a lot about family roles and how you get trapped inside them if you're not conscious of them.
Mhm.
They can kind of dictate your place in the world. And, that cross-section of the entertainment industry and how it's similar. You can get stuck doing the same thing or getting typecast as the same thing or whatever, and you feel very identified with that. So I really wanted to play with that idea of family dynamics and how much it can trap you if you don't, break free at some point. And I'd like people to examine that because I think it's important.
I agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think family is definitely a good thing to look at. And you hit on the industry, too, because it's obviously a really interesting time for the industry. And, even this film, it's a 17-day shoot. It's a lower-budget film. It's, maybe a film that's not made a couple years ago. So,
Right.
Just for
Right.
people to understand, like, what was the most difficult part about taking this from concept to actually putting it out there?
I mean, getting money.
Yeah.
And we didn't, we had really modest budget for what we were doing. Even, still shooting in my parents' house and people doing all these favors for us and friends, But really it was kind of the getting the money that was the hardest
Right.
part, I think. And then just the time. If we had more time, this would have been a different movie. There's something really nice to me about how it's a snapshot of what we accomplished in 17 days and what we edited in 3 weeks. It was very timely and, an experiment for sure. But I'd say that even if we had the luxury of time, it wouldn't be the same movie. Who
Right.
knows? Maybe it would be
Or a bigger budget,
way
too.
better.
Yeah.
Or a bigger budget, yeah.
But this is where I think the most interesting things are happening, are, in the independent,
Yeah.
world and
Well,
low budget and
Passion projects. Yeah.
passion
Yeah.
projects and projects that really, like Bridey, created this herself, which is, the
Grassroots.
opportunity for that is around now for people, which I think is great. It wasn't around not that long ago, where you could start from scratch and just get, John Sayles did it to a certain degree, and but the idea of creating something and getting it to a festival, getting it noticed, and now having it released is a pretty amazing thing to have happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No doubt about it. So for your family, I mean, give us a little bit of an inside peek. Bridey, with having parents like this, Chris, Paula, having 2 daughters in the industry, just give me a snapshot of just what this family is like, maybe compared to the family that we see in this exaggerated version in the film.
we're that, except it's
Exactly the same.
exaggerated in the film. You know.
Turned down a
Yeah,
little bit.
I think as people we're way more self-aware and kind of shy in a way. You know, we're not like show ponies in terms of our like.
You're just regular people.
Yeah, but then you can say, well, you made this movie where you guys are acting your asses off and dancing. Like, how can you're total hams? But we're also very quiet and private.
I think you can do both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that when we do play around in the living room in our actual house, it's just us. We don't have an audience there.
Right.
Yes.
And it's like Bridey's grandfather, my father was in the business, and the thing that the sense I always got for him was that he was kind of embarrassed by what he did, and I know that's been my case. I know I can do it, but I'm also a little embarrassed by it. So it's hard to talk about it as if it's art for me.
So what do you consider if it's not art?
Well, it's some form of entertainment. You're too young to remember freak shows, but it's something kind of akin to that.
Right.
What I do, and I think we've never really sat down and talked about technique or anything like that. I never did with my dad. You and Mom, I think, did more on the movie, but, well, no?
No, we just kind of all winged it. No, you worked with my acting coach in the city, and, I think we all have a similar sense of, I think we feel very lucky to do what we do. And so there's almost an embarrassment to how lucky we are. Or that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, there's we get to do this and it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean.
And I think there's also what we have in common is a bit of an independent streak that we like to, and I know my dad was this way too, do something that isn't necessarily in the mainstream, that isn't in the flow of everything else, that stands out on its own, whether it has the same
Good
amount
reception or
of
bad
following,
reception.
good or bad, it's on its own, and that to me right away makes it good.
Yeah, I like how you guys buck the trend. For somebody like you who's had a great career, you don't necessarily have to do something like this. For somebody like you don't have to work with your parents necessarily.
Right.
You've been acting for a couple decades. You guys are willing to take a challenge and a risk, whereas other people, like you were saying, are just pigeonholed or just locked in. I'm going to do these types of comedies for my whole career. I'm going to do these types of dramas, whereas you guys are like, you know what? Let's try a little bit of everything. And I think that's kind of the best approach to it,
No, that's great. It's a great spin, but I wish I could have gone the other way.
Okay.
No, I agree, and having a cult following to me is better
way
than
better than
$1
million
millions of fans.
Yeah,
Massive.
Yeah.
Oscar or anything.
No, I
like
don't need that.
that.
Just a few movies, TV shows, SNL. Just mention that as in passing.
It's like my name coming up every now and then. Oh yeah, that guy.
I love it. So when I say Clara's Ghost, give me one word that comes to mind immediately for you guys. Paul, let's start with you.
Family.
Extreme.
Alcohol.
Perfect way to end it. Guys, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Clara's Ghost, check it out. It's coming out this week. We'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.